Over the centuries of the Targaryen rule of the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros, many key dates jump out as important to the histories, but arguably, in regards to the recent history, 281 AC marks a seismic turning point for House Targaryen and Westeros as a whole. The maesters and common men alike have come to call 281 AC the year of the false spring. Winter held its icy grip on the land for near 2 years, but now it seemed the snows were starting to thaw, the woods were becoming green again, and the dark days finally growing ever longer and brighter. The white raven of the citadel that marks the changing of the seasons had not yet flown from Old Town, but the word around the citadel and among the maesters up and down Westeros was winter was finally at its end. As winters go, it wasn't a particularly harsh or brutal one. Even being only 2 years was not considered out of the ordinary. But even so, the lords and commons alike welcomed the warmth of spring and the summer to follow. As these warm winds blew from the south, lords and knights from throughout the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros made their way towards the cursed ruin of Harrenhal on the shores of the God's Eye to compete in Lord Whent's great tourney, which was promised to be the largest and most magnificent competition since the time of King Aegon V. Unlike much of history, where we in truth know very little of what actually occurred, this is certainly not the case with what became known as the Tourney of Harrenhal. We in fact know a surprising amount about it, thanks to the words set down by the scores of chroniclers, lords and knights who were present. The citadel in Old Town is in possession of countless letters sent between maesters who attended the events, meaning we can take a look at the tourney in detail from many different points of view. Thanks to the amount of sources, it is easier to establish fact and fiction, wherein a majority of sources agree or disagree. Yet, despite how well recorded the Great Tourney was, there is still so much we don't know, and sadly we will never know, as even while the great knights of the age fought in the lists, other more dangerous games were being played in the ruined halls of Harren and the tents and pavilions of the lords assembled. Many tales have emerged from Lord Whent's famous tourney, tales of plots and conspiracies, betrayals and rebellion, infidelities, secrets and mysteries. The truth of what occurred in these dark corners are known only to a few, many of whom have long since died, and now will forever hold their tongues. Thus, when discussing the events of this great tourney, it is vital we take much care to try and separate fact from fiction the best we can, and draw a clear line between what is objectively known, what is suspected, believed or rumoured to have happened. The tourney was first announced by Lord Walter Whent, the Lord of Harrenhal, late in the year 280 AC, not long after a visit from his younger brother, Sir Oswell Whent, a knight of the Kingsguard of Aerys II. That the tourney would be one like no other before it was clear from the first. The prizes being offered were thrice as large as the ones offered at the tourney in Lannisport, held by Tywin Lannister in the year 272 AC, in celebration of King Aerys being on the Iron Throne for 10 years. Many in fact wondered how on earth Lord Whent could outspend the great Tywin Lannister with all the gold and Castle Rock. Most took this simply as an attempt by Lord Whent to outdo the former hand and demonstrate the wealth and splendour of his house. There were those, however, who believed this was no more than a ruse, and Lord Whent no more than a cat's paw. His lordship lacked the funds to pay such magnificent prizes, they argued. Someone else must surely have stood behind him, someone who did not lack for gold, but preferred to remain in the shadows, whilst allowing the Lord of Harrenhal to claim the glory for hosting this magnificent event. We have no shred of evidence that such a shadow host did ever exist, but the notion was widely believed at the time, and remains so today. But if indeed there was a shadow host, who was he? And why did he choose to keep his role a secret? A dozen names have been put forward over the years, but only one truly seems compelling: Rhaegar Targaryen, the Prince of Dragonstone, with Tywin Lannister also closely associated with the claim as well. If the speculative tale is to be believed, it was Prince Rhaegar who urged Lord Walter to hold his tourney, using Lord Walter's Kingsguard brother Sir Oswell as an intermediary. Rhaegar would provide Walter with the gold to offer such splendid prizes, in order to bring as many lords and knights rights to Harrenhal as possible. It is widely believed today that the prince had no interest or intent for the Great Tourney to really be that, a tourney, but rather he was intent on gathering the great lords of Westeros in one place in what would amount to an informal and unofficial Great Council in order to discuss ways and a means of dealing with the growing madness of his father, King Aerys II, with the likely option being a regency, with either Rhaegar or Lord Tywin Lannister likely taking the role, or perhaps the use of a regency council, as once was done for King Aegon III in his minority, with the more extreme proposed outcome a forced abdication of King Aerys for the good of the realm, which has been argued over the years would have been an act of rebellion and could very well have started another Targaryen civil war should Rhaegar not get enough lords to back his plan. If indeed this was the purpose behind the tourney, it was a perilous game that Rhaegar Targaryen was playing. Though few doubted that Aerys had taken leave of his senses, many still had good reason to oppose his removal from the Iron Throne, for certain courtiers and councillors had gained great wealth and power through the king, and knew they stood to lose all should Prince Rhaegar come to power. The Mad King could be savagely cruel, as seen most plainly when he burnt those who he perceived to be his enemies, but he could also be extravagant, showering men who pleased him with honours, offices and lands. The lick-spittle lords who surrounded Aerys II had gained much and more from the king's madness, eagerly seized upon any opportunity to speak ill of Prince Rhaegar and inflame the father's suspicions of the son. Chief amongst the Mad King's supporters were the three lords of his small council: Carlton Chalstead, the Master of Coin; Lucerys Velaryon, the Master of Ships; and Sir Simon Staunton, Master of Laws. The eunuch Varys, the Master of Whisperers; and Wisdom Rosart, Grand Master of the Guild of Alchemists, also enjoyed the king's trust and a seat on the council. Prince Rhaegar's support came from the younger men at court, including the likes of Lord John Connington, Sir Miles Mouton of Maidenpool, and Sir Richard Lonmouth. The Dornishmen, who had come to court with Princess Elia Martell, were also in the prince's confidence as well. In particular, Lewin Martell, Elia's uncle and sworn brother of the Kingsguard. But the most formidable of Rhaegar's friends and allies in King's Landing surely must have been Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning. To Grand Maester Pycelle and Lord Owen Merryweather, the king's hand fell the unenviable task of keeping the peace between these factions, even as their rivalries grew even more venomous. In letters to the Citadel, Pycelle wrote that the divisions within the Red Keep reminded him uncomfortably of the situation before the Dance of the Dragons a century before, where the enmity between Queen Alicent and Princess Rhaenyra had split the realm in two, to grievous cost. A similar bloody conflict might await the Seven Kingdoms once again, he warned, unless some accord could be reached that would satisfy both Prince Rhaegar's supporters and the king's. Had any whiff of proof come into their hands to show that Prince Rhaegar was in fact conspiring against his father, King Aerys' loyalists would most certainly have used it to bring about the prince's downfall. Indeed, certain of the king's men had even gone as far to suggest that Aerys should disinherit his disloyal son and name his younger brother heir to the Iron Throne instead. Prince Viserys was but 7 years of age, and his eventual succession would certainly mean a regency, wherein they themselves would rule as regents. Was this grand tourney at Harrenhal some plot by Prince Rhaegar to call a great council? Did Tywin Lannister play some part? It is not likely we will ever know the true answer, but all we can say for sure is there were men within the king's court, proof or not, that believed this may have been Rhaegar's intent, which in itself helped guide House Targaryen on the path to its doom.